All right, I'm going to give you an update in terms of what's been going on in Toronto real estate market as a whole in the months of September. September usually is the beginning of the new cycle of real estate activity. So usually you get more properties being listed. So let's see what happens. So as you can see from the slide here, year over year compared to last year, we had 7% less transactions happening. It was mainly led by the number of transactions, the decline in number of transactions for anything but freehold properties, for condos. We were down by 14% for condominiums in terms of number of transactions, and we were up by about 2% for freehold properties in terms of number of transactions, but that didn't keep pace with the number of properties that are being listed, so I'll cover that. Average prices were up by 10% for freehold properties comparing to last year, and they were down by 3% for condos comparing to last year. Now, I don't necessarily consider average prices as a very accurate way of measuring how prices are moving over time. I think the more accurate way is to look at the price index, which will adjust for the type of the property. So the chart you see here is for Toronto single family houses, and this is the MLS index price. Year over year, we're up by 3% in terms of index prices. The peak of the market was February 2022, obviously. Moving on, we had about 50%, just shy of 50% more properties listed in Toronto, both with condos and freehold properties, which was to be expected. Last year, we had a historic low number of properties being offered in the month of September. So naturally, there was a backlog of sellers that were supposed to enter the market. So I don't think the number of properties being listed are necessarily remarkable, and I will show you a chart which will show us the past 10 years what's been offered, what was being offered for the month of September. What was remarkable or extraordinary was the number of properties, the number of transactions. So usually those two lines should follow each other to some extent. The ratio for last year was 40%, so the number of transactions over number of properties being listed, sales to listings ratio. Anything above 50% would constitute a strong seller's market. Between 40 to 50% would be a balanced market, in my opinion, and below that would be a more favorable environment for buyers. And this year, for September, for freehold properties, we averaged 28%. For condos, we averaged 22%. Now, the chart you see here, it shows you the number of properties, freehold properties that were being offered for the month of September going back 10 years. And as you can see, the trend line, the linear trend line is pointing down. We had 2,800 properties being offered this year. Last year, September, we had only 1,900 properties. Again, it was a historic low. So the number of listings that are coming to the market, in my opinion, is not extraordinary. What is extraordinary is the number of transactions. As you can see from the next slide, the line below, we have 774 transactions happening for freehold properties in the month of September. So that gap, that ratio would resulted in a 28% sales to new listings ratio. And as you can see, going back 10 years, we were hovering about in the balanced market, pointing towards a seller's market and territory, 50%, 58%. Lowest was 2017, 38%. But this year, for the past 10 years at least, it was the lowest ratio for sales to new listings ratio. And that, to me, points towards an environment that is more favorable for buyers because they have more options to choose from. Now, that hasn't necessarily manifested itself in terms of average prices yet. As I said, index prices are up by about 3% year over year. That remains to be seen. Usually, you get in the month of September, we get more properties being offered, and they gradually are being sold for the rest of the year. So that remains to be seen. The moving average for freehold properties, the sales to new listings ratio for the past 6 months, as you can see from this slide, we averaged 46%, which was basically a balanced market or slash seller's market, but that number gradually went down to 27% as we got more properties being listed for the past 30 days. Average sale prices were up month over month by about 12%. Again, I don't necessarily consider average prices to be an accurate way of forming an opinion on price movement, because sometimes you have bigger houses being sold in that specific month, so it skews the results. But for the past 180 days, our average prices are pointing upwards. As far as ask to sell ratio, which is a good measure to find out, okay, how far from the listing price should we expect to bring an offer, we were averaging, for the past 30 days, we averaged about 2.5% below ask price in Toronto as a whole for freehold properties. The chart you see here is the house price index, MLS house price index for apartment and townhouses in Toronto. For apartments, we marked a slight uptick by about 2.5% year over year, and for townhouses, I think we were down by about 0.5% year over year as far as average prices are concerned, index prices, sorry. The chart you see here, real quick, about condos. These are the historic number of properties that were being offered for the month of September going back 10 years. As you can see, again, the trend line and the number of properties that were offered this year, which was 4,100 properties, condo properties offered this year. This is in line. It's not extraordinary as far as the moving average is concerned. What was extraordinary was, again, for number of transactions. So the slide you see here, we had just shy of 900 properties transactions happening. So that gap, the sales to listings ratio, resulted in a ratio of 22%, which, again, in my opinion, is a clear indication that we are in a buyer's market territory for condominiums as well. As you can see, the moving and the average for the past 10 years for that ratio was hovering around balanced market / seller's market. 40% to 70% was the peak in 2016. So 22% is an indication that buyers have more options. How that's going to manifest itself for average prices, that remains to be seen. For condominiums, we were down year over year. We are up by 1.5% for condominiums as far as index prices are concerned comparing to last September. So we'll have to see how the fall market will continue to perform. Moving averages are for condos here as well. We are averaging 21% sales to new listings ratio for the past 30 days, and as to sell ratio is basically at par with the asking price. So slightly above asking price are the transactions for condos. Real quick, I wanted to include what's happening in the rental market as well. September was the third consecutive month that we marked a slight decrease for average rent prices in Toronto as a whole by 1%. Month over month, we were down. There are more properties being offered, so the ratio of sales to listings was at 77% for average for the past 6 months, which is a clear seller's market territory, but that ratio is going down. We averaged 54% for the past 30 days, and that's why we are seeing a decline for average rent prices as well. But it is clearly a seller's market as far as rental market is concerned, because there are not enough properties being offered in Toronto for rent, and I anticipate for that to remain the same, although we are getting more house completions, apartment completions in Toronto. 2023, we were expecting to have more completions, and they're being delivered, so that should also affect rent prices moving forward. Anyways, that's it for my update for Toronto real estate market. Again, these numbers are just pointing towards general trend of the market. We shouldn't use them to form an opinion on a specific property. This is just pointing towards the sentiment of the market, and that's the maximum that should be derived from this information. That's it for me. Thank you very much.